What if a planet existed where the dead never truly left? A lifeless world filled with whispers that call your name. Exomortis 9 was supposed to be empty. No life, no atmosphere, just ruins. But then the signal started. Expeditions were sent, none returned. And their final transmissions? A single chilling message: we are waiting. The Solace was the last mission. They thought they were prepared. But the moment they landed, they knew. Something was watching. Shadows moved, voices whispered, and one by one, they vanished. Then they saw it, a towering figure with burning eyes. A god long forgotten, waiting to be worshipped again. It didn't kill them, it erased them, pulled them into the dark, as if they had never existed at all. Only one returned, but he was not alone, because Exomortis 9 was never abandoned. The dead never left, and now they are awake. Space was supposed to be empty, cold, silent, but some places whispered in the dark. The planet was known as Exomortis 9, a lifeless world orbiting a dying star, long forgotten by the cosmos. The first probes reported nothing but endless ruins and an unexplainable energy signature pulsing from beneath its surface. There was no life, no atmosphere, just dead stone and the remnants of a civilization lost to time. But then the signals began. At first they were dismissed as interference, random distortions picked up by deep space satellites. But the more scientists analyzed them, the clearer they became. Not noise, a voice. A team was assembled. The Solace, a research vessel, was sent to investigate. Commander Elias Rourke led the expedition, alongside Dr. Catherine Monroe, a xenolinguist, and 3 other highly trained specialists. Lieutenant Darius Owens, security officer, Dr. Elara Vasquez, archaeologist, and Sergeant Cole Strickland, an ex-Marine tasked with ensuring their safety. Their mission was clear: decipher the signal and uncover what lay beneath Exomortis 9. They had no idea what was waiting for them. As the Solace entered orbit, the planet's surface stretched out below. A barren wasteland of blackened rock and eerie crumbling structures. The ruins were impossibly vast, stretching for miles, their design alien, yet disturbingly symmetrical. "Looks abandoned," Monroe muttered, watching the live feed. But something doesn't feel right. The ship's scanners picked up no signs of movement, no atmosphere, no biological life forms. "So where the hell is the signal coming from?" Rourke asked. The answer came almost instantly. A pulse of energy rippled through the ship's systems, disrupting every monitor for a fraction of a second. The lights flickered. Then, through the static, a distorted whisper echoed through the speakers. "We are waiting." The crew froze. Did anyone else hear that?" Owens asked, his usual bravado gone. Monroe swallowed hard. "That wasn't a transmission. That was inside the ship." A deep chill settled over the crew. They had no choice now. They had to go down. The landing was smooth, but the silence that followed was suffocating. The ruins towered above them, immense structures of black stone, etched with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. As they stepped onto the surface, their boots crunched over what looked like dust, until Monroe knelt down, running a gloved hand through it. Not dust, bone fragments. "Jesus," Owens whispered. The city was a graveyard. Skeletons, petrified in mid-motion, clung to walls and lay sprawled on the streets. Their skulls were frozen in silent screams, their rib cages cracked open as if something had burst from within. Vasquez examined the architecture, tracing her hand over symbols etched into the stone. These weren't just homes. They were temples, places of worship. She turned to Rourke. But worship of what? Then the whispering began again, faint, in the windless air, calling their names. "We need to move," Rourke ordered. But Monroe wasn't listening. She was staring at something, a massive obelisk rising from the center of the ruins, the source of the signal. The obelisk was ancient, its surface carved with symbols that shifted when you weren't looking. Monroe traced a hand over the stone. It was warm, beating, and then it spoke. "You have come?" The ground shook. The ruins came alive. The skeletons moved. A wave of black energy surged from the obelisk, swallowing the city in unnatural darkness. The crew screamed as something unseen pulled them into the void. One by one, they vanished. Rourke was running. The corridors of the ruins had changed, twisting, closing in. The walls pulsed like living tissue. He could still hear his team screaming, their voices blending into the whispering void. Then he saw Monroe. She stood in the darkness, her suit torn, her helmet cracked, but her eyes were wrong. They glowed. "It won't let us leave," she whispered. "We were never supposed to leave." She took a step forward and her face began to change, stretching, contorting, splitting apart like something wearing her as a mask. Owens appeared beside her, his body half consumed, veins of darkness spreading through his flesh. "It's inside us now," he gasped. The shadows behind them shifted. The true form of the devourer emerged, a colossal entity, its form ever shifting, a god of hunger, a being that fed on minds, on memory, on existence itself. It had been trapped here, waiting. Now it was awake. Rourke ran. He sprinted through the ruins, dodging the skeletal remains of a civilization that had once worshipped this thing. The ship. He had to get to the ship. The whispers grew louder, clawing at his mind, trying to pull him into the dark. "Stay!" the voices commanded. "Become one with us!" Strickland, injured but still fighting, held off the advancing darkness with the last of their explosives. "Go!" he screamed before being swallowed whole. But Rourke had one last option. As he reached the Solace, he activated the ship's emergency thrusters. A shockwave of fire and energy ripped through the ruins, breaking the obelisk apart. For a moment, just a moment, the voices screamed, and then silence. Rourke sat alone in the Solace, staring at the infinite black void beyond the cockpit window. His breathing was uneven, his hands shaking as he clutched the console. The ship was in autopilot, guiding him away from Exomortus 9, but he knew he hadn't truly left. The silence was suffocating. No crew voices, no mission updates, no comforting beeps from the ship's AI. Just him. At least that's what he wanted to believe. Then it started again. The whisper, not over the ship's speakers, not through the comms, inside his head. "You think you escaped?" His breath hitched. He closed his eyes, gripping his temples, willing the voice away. "You brought me with you." Rourke's eyes snapped open. The cockpit glass reflected something. Something that shouldn't be there. A shape. Tall, thin, smiling. Its eyes, his eyes, were glowing. Rourke turned instantly, pulse hammering, but nothing was there. Just the empty ship. Just the void. But now he knew he wasn't alone. The ship's systems malfunctioned. Log entries appeared. Ones Rourke had never written. The timestamps were wrong, fluctuating between past and present. Security cameras flickered to life, capturing movements in the corridors, but he hadn't moved. And then his own voice played over the ship's internal logs. Day 1, the whispers are quiet. Day 3, I see it in my reflection. Day 7, I am not me anymore. He hadn't recorded these. His fingers trembled as he switched to the cockpit camera feed. The screen showed him, sitting there, staring at the camera. But something was off. The reflection of him smiled, but he hadn't. His stomach twisted. His reflection was watching him. Then slowly, it blinked. A whisper, his own voice, spoke from the speakers. "It's okay, Elias. You were never meant to leave." Rourke fought the urge to scream, his heart pounding as he backed away from the screen. His body felt heavy, his limbs sluggish, as if something was anchoring him in place. The ship's nav computer blared a new destination, but it wasn't Earth. It was Exomortis 9. "The cycle must continue," the Whisper sighed. His fingers hovered over the manual controls, desperate to override the system. He had to stop this. He had to break free. But the moment he reached for the controls, a hand clamped over his own. Not flesh, not real. But there. He turned his head, pulse roaring in his ears. There it was, towering, smiling, waiting. "You were always meant to return." Rourke's final scream never left his throat. The ship's distress beacon activated, transmitting coordinates to the next expedition team. And so the signal continued. Exomortis 9 would never be alone.